There he is.
Hey, Paul.
How are you?
Pretty good, man. How are you doing?
I'm great. Excited to talk to you about the Kingsbury deal. Just give me a couple of minutes on the project as you think of your project. Just kind of walk us through what you're building there.
Well, it's a biogas to RNG pipeline project that will collect about 70,000 tons of organic waste a year, and it will push about 200,000 MMBTUs of biogas RNG onto the pipeline. We are looking at it's a 65 million, capex or something. The construction guys have gotten rolling. It'll be, well over 12 months before we're even starting commissioning. The location in LaPorte, it's a good location because it's a full 50 miles outside of Chicago, which seems like a long way, but honestly, it's about the first time driving away from Chicago where you get good siting opportunity, communities that want to work with you, industrial parks that
Right.
have space in them.
Yeah.
And the reason is they have an industrial park there that they've created from a very large former munitions manufacturing and distribution center that was used during World War II.
Mhm.
And so, for a long time, no one was really using it for anything. They've invested some money in infrastructure and getting it organized as an industrial park zone. So they were very happy for us to come in. They've got other very heavy industrial activity there. I think our nearest neighbor is a magnesium plant. If no neighbor real concerns, everybody's very happy to see us doing this kind of activity there.
And they're helping with the water story as well, correct? They're giving you some infrastructure to send your wastewater to?
There is a wastewater facility nearby, which is
Yeah.
convenient. It is adjacent to the industrial park and has the concession to provide wastewater services to them.
Feedstock, is that mostly solid material, liquid?
What we've been focusing on more is industrial and commercial scale partners, generators. There's a tremendous amount of manufacturing in northwestern Indiana, and that includes food manufacturing.
The project you're building has depackaging as a part of it, correct?
Yes, we've focused on that heavily.
So solid material, you're well geared up to take packaged, expired grocery store kind of waste or processing waste in cardboard boxes and the like.
Both of those, certainly, and other kinds of bulk, lightly to moderately contaminated material. But we are also set up to take actual palletized depackaging waste. We're set up to provide certificates of destruction for beverages and types of products that require that. And we are also able to take liquid, and liquid is, of course, a portion of that.
And your company will be operating this facility as a part of your story. It's your people, right?
That is correct. This is a Nexus W2V owned and operated facility.
So tell us about Nexus. What is tell us about the company and its genesis and its story.
So I really couldn't be happier to be anywhere other than Nexus. I'll say that right up top. The founders of Nexus started it in the early 20 teens. I want to say 2013, something like that. Roshan Vani, Paul Hammond, and Ben Hubbard met working for very large engineering companies on big projects in the Gulf, traditional energy types of things, Bechtel, Fluor, and they decided they wanted to set up their own shop. So from 2013 and through the 2020 or 2020 teens, pardon me, through the 20 teens, they were able to grow their sustainability practice, moving through that time period from more direct project controls, subcontracting gigs, and engineering work to the kind of consulting that they were doing by the time I arrived around 2020. They were providing a lot of review of projects in the sustainability space to investors, to banks, and to large infra funds. As with all of the projects in sustainability, as you and I both know, right up until the late 20 teens, the answer was often no. The sustainability projects had a lot of trouble presenting themselves as fully baked and ready for prime time with large investment entities and sources of capital. Finally, somewhere around 2019, 2020, these clients started to come to Nexus and say, well, what can we invest in? To this day, Nexus remains project management, early stage engineering, turnaround operations, and consultants to investors. That is still their primary job, and that is most of the company.
What can you offer about how the project was financed?
It's a equity debt split. The entities that participated are Orion Infrastructure Capital, which is a global infrastructure company that Ameris Bank and Sterling Bank are the lenders on the project and providing the debt.
Yeah.
And we were able to meet the requirements for debt financing by taking advantage of the USDA loan guarantee program run under the Renewable Energy for America program.
Any light you can shed on the facility itself? That you had a domestic content clause within the tax credit to try to look at. Was it challenging to meet such kind of criteria, like getting enough domestic content on the project?
We needed to pay attention to that, without a doubt. And I think the challenges were not so much with our construction partners and with equipment opportunities, where they actually had already geared up to be responsive to these kinds of things. And as you and I know, I mean, Buy America and labor and things like this are the ITC did not invent these things, right? We've been looking at these kinds of requirements for a variety of programs for quite a while. But with the amount of money involved in the ITC and the investment tax credit, the production tax credit, it becomes much more heavily scrutinized. And so to prepare ourselves to be scrutinized by Treasury at the time of sale of the credit, which is a year plus from now, we needed to work with extremely reputable firms on the legal and the accounting side. And these very sophisticated large firms obviously want to be very careful about saying that they will be able to meet these things. So it was more about record keeping and tracking and reporting and setting up all these systems, which again, fortunately, Nexus PMG is quite good at. And so we were able to assure the large accounting firms and large law firms that we would be delivering the information and the data that they would need to get the tax credit approved and sold when the time comes.
So things like prevailing wage and the apprenticeship questions, I'm sure that was some questions you really had to focus on, I would think.
Indeed, our primary construction provider is getting set up right now as we speak to conduct the kind of record keeping and perform the kind of reporting which is required to assure our accounting partners that we are complying with that. We've had some of our vendors have really jumped up in terms of the equipment part to document and prove that they are doing the things that need to be done. I will note on the prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements, which really I think we all know, and I don't mind saying this, it's just a euphemism for union work, right? I mean, that's it essentially, I mean, in an area like Northwest Indiana and in other areas of the country where union labor is popular and prevalent, I don't think that we would have wanted to try to do a project that didn't take advantage of organized labor and what that brings to the quality of a project. Where people like unions and where people like organized labor, I think developers need to look to that and lean into that and work with those folks because they're very important local stakeholders as well.
Speak for a moment, if you would, on the energy side of things. Is there a pipeline near the project site?
So there is a gas distribution pipeline, which is all we need to inject at the volumes we're injecting. Some projects are big that they need, the real transmission lines, but we're able to inject into distribution systems. So if I were to identify anything about the project that was particularly challenging, I think it would be working with the LDC, who probably through no fault of its own, had some pretty cumbersome mechanics on how to get our arrangement set up. Our pipeline is only about 200 yards away, and
Yeah.
it still took quite a while to get it all set up with them.
Can you offer anything about where the gas ultimately goes? Anything about the RNG offtake?
We have a long-term offtake agreement with a counterparty, but I can, say it's a Canadian energy company. When we talk about a quote-unquote voluntary market, a lot of people tend to think that that's always just truly voluntary activity, when in fact we really should say non-RFS market, right? Or non-LCFS market, people who are in other compliance-driven markets. So the Canadian players that are buying the environmental attributes off of American RNG systems, they are still under compliance obligation. That's why they're doing it, is to, or they're anticipating compliance obligations. So we're selling the environmental attributes there, taking advantage of the ability to decouple and book and claim the way all these things work.
Anything that kind of really drove you nuts about getting the project developed? If I remember, you had an endangered species that last year, didn't you? Anything else along those lines that were really just challenging?
So we were lucky with all those sort of that troublesome category and like set of things like species and I don't know, you find a historical or an archaeological thing or whatever. None of those were really all that difficult. We do have an endangered species that's near the site. It is a seasonal endangered species, so we are able to work when they are not doing the things that need to be protected for them to do. It was a bat.
Not
um,
bad.
but the bat really wasn't the big challenge. I mean, I would say
Yeah.
that, the only real challenge was helping the LDC, helping the gas partner get out of its own way is really what it comes down to. I mean, I think that with all these counterparties, I wanted to make sure that I talked about something positive because I think that a lot these things are so difficult to develop and you just spend so much time grinding away that it's easy to forget that sometimes you get really great parts and really great opportunities. We had a fantastic property seller. They were incredibly understanding. They were incredibly knowledgeable about their property. They were professional. They knew how to do everything. We asked them for things, they had it. We asked them for extensions, they happily gave them. And it was just really a pleasure to work with them.
Great.
Everything else, I mean, the permitting agencies in general in Indiana have a little bit of a resource issue. So they're very well intentioned and they're very professional, but they don't always have time to get to all the work on their desk.
Yeah.
And maybe this is a waxing philosophical at a macro site, but what I've found around the US is that you've got two different kinds of states. You've got states that have complex regulatory systems. You have to do a lot of complex regulatory activity, but they have large agencies, right, that are geared up to do that. You got a lot of work to do, but you got people who have the time to do the work with you, right? We're doing Project Maryland right now, for example, and that's kind of how it works, right? And then you've got states that have lighter regulatory environments, but the agencies tend to be underfunded. Each of them have challenges, I think, in different ways.
Paint the picture for us for 3 to 5 years out for Nexus. Where do you see this project fitting into your story? What does the story look like you're trying to create for yourselves?
We would like to have a portfolio of sustainability waste to value projects. I think that in Indiana, we're going to see a few additional things that we'll be doing there. We tend to favor at Nexus a approach that we like to call land and expand. Once we've developed a project to a significant degree in an area, we've gotten to know a lot of things and a lot of people. We understand the environment, we understand the politics, we understand a lot of the laws. We're going to now amortize all the work we've done to get familiar with Indiana, which is a great place, and we've actually really enjoyed being there. We're going to work on a couple of other things. We're looking at a larger waste to value site that could end up being what they call a MRF, right? Like a real materials recovery facility. We intend to have a biochar facility adjacent to the AD site there in LaPorte to manage the digestate. We're also looking at some other AD opportunities in the southern part of the state. We'll see each of our early projects will then hopefully coalesce around it some ancillary projects that are either just kind of related or directly related.
So looking at maybe spring, summer 26 to start taking waste there, is that the goal?
Yeah, they'll start taking it earlier for commissioning because to commission, you have to load up the tanks and charge everything up. So it'll be early 2026, really, when they're starting to take some. But yeah, COD, full commercial operations, that's the right time frame.
So Ted, thank you. We appreciate your time. Congratulations to Nexus on your success here in Indiana. Looking forward to seeing a great plant getting built there.
And thank you for having us, Paul. It's a great thing you're doing here.